You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Hey everybody, it's All Things 3D and it's Week in Review, May 27th, 2016. Last weekend, it was the MakerFaire Bay Area 2016. I went 2 days. It was incredible.
I had to hold down the fort here.
Oh, next year, you cannot miss the MakerFaire. This is, I think, my fourth one, and it's just gotten better and better. It obviously is more and more crowded every year, but it's okay. Well, it's just so it's just like such a warm, positive energy throughout the whole thing. Everybody is like, you know, just all the kids just really get. I mean, it's just such a great mojo. I was really stoked. And here's a little video showing some highlights. I didn't take this video. There was so much going on that to try to, whoever put this video together, thank you. We'll put you in our credits. This is just on YouTube. Highlights from the MakerFaire. There was so many cool inventions, and obviously the 3D printer section of the show, again, is like the most impacted part of the whole show. During the height of the Saturday, you almost can't even walk through the 3D printing section. It's wall to wall. It's chaos.
So Part Daddy was there. Oh,
well,
Part Daddy was there.
Part Daddy was there with his Part Daddy printer, the huge, and they were printing. I think the nozzle is about a 5mm nozzle on the Part Daddy machine, and they're printing these massive prints in like 24 hours. They're printing life-size statues.
Wow.
They have a and the ham radio stuff was great. I got to talk with some cool stuff. I came back with some pretty cool toys.
Show and tell today, huh?
NVIDIA was there launching. They launched a new product line of kind of their own PC boards with processors that are kind of based on their new and their maker boards for like $500, or I think as low as $150.
Who is this?
NVIDIA.
Really?
Qualcomm is obviously, they stepped up their Snapdragon game. They came with a bunch of new stuff. Arduino brought out a couple new products. They've got some new boards with Intel, along with Arduino has their new Creator. It's a cloud-based IDE for doing all your coding. You don't even need an app on your computer anymore, so you can be coding at the library. New product called Particle, or not by the company Particle, from Particle, Electron. I've been playing with that all week. There's just so many toys. I don't miss it. It's worth, if you were going to plan a vacation to California, do it around the MakerFaire and go to the MakerFaire. It is like the most fun thing for people that like to make stuff. It really is. It's just super fun, and so many creative minds all in one place.
Yeah, and if you remember last year, I spent 3 days here, so I probably burned myself out a little bit. So a lot of this looks very familiar to me. And it probably looks like about the, they probably have more people this year, but it looks like about the activity that I saw, lots of things. And as you said, a lot of the names you just mentioned, I remember.
That looks like a lot of the footage looks like this is obviously from the Friday, and you pay more to go on the Friday. I went on the Friday and the Saturday, and my take is I was already driving up there, going to get a hotel, and already went on. So, I mean, you're already paying a couple $100, spend an extra $40 to go on the Friday. And it's a shorter time frame, but you get to see more because there's way less people, and the people are kind of still setting up. So you kind of get to see a little bit of behind the scenes stuff. It's kind of cool. I definitely next year plan on going on the Friday and probably the Saturday again. It's just, and we took the nephews. It was just such a great, like I said, just a really great energy. Had a great time.
So, you got any of these toys to show us? All right, show and tell time.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've been building this board. I can't really show it. Well, maybe.
Sure you
I've been building a little cell phone a little cell phone project that I've been working on on Particle. Been using they have an online, it's like a cloud-based IDE, and I've been building it's a project that I've been working on forever with an Arduino, but this is like kind of more built for exactly what I need it for. And it's like $2.99 a month for a meg of data, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're just querying something for data and getting it back, then you know, if you're doing it like, I don't know, 10 times a day or something. This is to actually log or show me in real time how full our well is on top of a hill at the farm. So like it's in an area that doesn't have Wi-Fi, and we have these tanks. And sometimes like if you have a leak, it needs to, you know, you need to be alerted like, oh, hey, there's a leak going on. You don't want to drain your tanks because you could burn out your well or whatever. So I've been working on this thing for forever, but I could never really get it working consistently. This product, it's called the Electron. It's a new product.
Go ahead and put it in the screen.
It's called the Electron. This is the box it comes in. It comes in a really nice little box that has, and it comes on a breadboard that's like has a little instruction manual to get it up and running with LEDs, and then you can ping it from the cloud. You can actually flash the firmware over the air. So you can do OTA over the air, and you can, so you don't even need it plugged into your computer. And then it even comes with a little LiPo. So, and then they sell a solar accessory kit, so you can charge it with solar, keep it charged. So you can, it's really geared towards things that you want to put out somewhere that has cell reception. This one is 3G. They have a 2G model, but they're recommending you go the 3G in the North America.
So the 3G is built in?
3G is built in. It's got a little external antenna that you can kind of wire up. And then they include this nice little case that you can actually use as a project enclosure if you're going to put it outside. Obviously seal it up a little bit, but
so that's what you're paying the monthly service for, is using their cellular service. Is that correct?
Yeah, and they're tied in with one of those tier 2. Basically, it uses AT&T's backbone, and GE was giving away free smart light bulbs. These are cool. They have a $25,000 prize going right now for a competition for building with these smart light bulbs. These are incredible, and they sell these at Target now. You can buy a kit of these for, I think it was like $90, get you 5 of them or something. They're LEDs, and this one,
they're not colored though, right? They're not like the Philips Hue.
This is colored. This has 3 different colors it does. So it'll do warm light, and it'll strip the blue light out. So this one's for sleep. So you can hook, and they have an app, but you can develop your own apps, and they have their own API that you can, their own SDK that you can actually, and that's what they're kind of calling, they're doing a $25,000 competition right now for, like, you know, setting up an Arduino or whatever, setting up an alarm that if somebody comes in when they're not supposed to or whatever, or even when you show up at your door or whatever, it automatically turns the light on. So whatever your creation is, they're going to have a $25,000 prize and fly you out to MakerFaire, New York. I think this is like a 90-day challenge, I want to say. So you can go sign up.
I already have an idea for one.
But at the MakerFaire, if you sign up on their list, they were giving these out, and there was all kinds of freebies.
What else you got?
Okay,
Hi, my name is Mrs. Kopak. I'm your teacher for today, and what do we have for us, Chris?
Yeah. These ones, this is called Ply 90. Ply 90? Let me pull up Ply 90. These are like these little joiners with a piece of hardware in them.
I've seen those before.
Yeah, they've been there before, but I got a set of these. And they're really strong. And this is where I think a lot of the maker movement is going to go, and where I think a lot of market, like if you were going to create something, hardware. I think hardware is the future, because especially using, if you can 3D print the hardware. So these little project things, I don't know. What else can I share?
What did you see in as far as the 3D fabrication? Did you get a chance to see some of that that one
yeah. There was
SLA? Did you get down there?
The Flux Delta was there. The Atom printer. There was a couple new printers. There was some vacuum forming stuff that was pretty interesting.
Was it the one that we covered on the show?
Yeah. No, this was a Japanese company, and they wanted like $3,000. The one on Kickstarter, you know, is like, I think they've got the cost down to like what, $300, $400.
It seemed very reasonable.
And I think
what's the sorry.
And I think vacuum forming's great. I don't really know what I would use it all that much for, other than building like a mold, but it's going to be one-sided, you know. So
exactly.
I think that there's definitely room to play around with the technology. I think it's a little expensive at this point, because all it really is like a toaster oven with a vacuum hooked up and some holes. And this Japanese company, they're looking for an American partner to actually distribute them, but they were like, I want to say like $3,500 for a little unit. And it was
what was the build size? Because one of the things on the Kickstarter was only you can see.
Yeah, that's about how big this one was. It was really, wow. I mean, it was really nice components and obviously Japanese. And but I thought the price of it was pretty high. Yeah, and then there's this other company. I think I've seen them before, but they make this product called Nscope, and it's a scope.
Like a breadboard.
It's hooked up to a breadboard. But this is the actual guts of the thing, and you can't really see the actual.
Oh, okay.
And what it is it's a USB oscilloscope / signal generator. You know,
cool.
All on one breadboard thing. And
what's the sample rate? Do you know?
I think the sample rate. I'd have to look at the specs. I don't. The
sample rate's important because that determines, along with the analog, for like 1 megabit per second or something like that.
Let's see, Nscope.
Some of the less expensive oscilloscopes have like a 5 megahertz input. Or actually 5 to 50. It all depends, but as the frequency range goes higher, or the bandwidth, obviously the price goes up. And in the digital sampling, obviously your sampling rate will determine your Nyquist of half that.
It's 4 megabits per second, 12-bit resolution, 4 channels, 10 mega ohm input impedance, a variable gain, 25 millivolt or microvolt. Minimum resolvable voltage, and then it's got 2 function generators. So it's got an AD9837 DDS chip, 2 of them, and 28-bit frequency resolution, variable amplitude, variable DC offset. It's got all kinds of cool stuff that I don't even know what that is.
Well,
but I need to take. So the reason that I needed I wanted an oscilloscope, but I wanted one like this. One that is actually software defined, because I'm getting into the software defined stuff, especially with ham radio. There was some really interesting stuff. Probably the best talk I had with anybody at the show was some ham guys, or this one ham guy in particular. There was actually a couple ham guys. And since I've been, I got my ham license a couple months ago. And
really?
Oh, yeah. You got anybody, I highly recommend anybody that's into electronics get their ham and start exploring it, because it's like a whole other world of how you interface with computers and how to transmit and receive data. But these guys wrote a library to receive the images from the NOAA satellites that have been up there for like 30 years, right? They're scanning satellites, they call them. Mm-hmm. And basically, a satellite is flying overhead, flying over you all the time, and always continuously putting out that scan data. So all it's doing is as live as it's passing over you. So you can actually take that scan data and put it onto a computer, right? And it's analog signal, but then you compile it into a digital image, and it somehow these guys wrote this library. It's amazing, but you can see when the satellite, when they actually they start to get signal, and they follow the satellite, and then you can see when it falls off. But it's like a live image, and it's constantly scanning the Earth. So if you had a radio beacon at points all around the Earth, you could have a continuous panoramic of the whole Earth, you know, and it's constantly outputting the signal. So there's these, it's really cool. You can build like these little cheap radios that hook up to your computer, and you can actually receive weather satellites or live images of the Earth if you know how to do it, if you know how to point it at the right satellite, you know, and like you can do it yourself. They built these libraries on, for Raspberry Pis. So they're putting them out there. So that's another project I want to do.
So do you have a ham radio?
Oh yeah. I have a few different ones. Really, like you could start cheap. Like that's where I started, was just super cheap. So they sell like for about $25. You can buy the really famous, really common one. Is called the It's Baofeng 5RA. It's on Amazon, and so really a lot of fun. MakerFaire was just, it's an incredible time.
Well,
we missed you, Mike.
Yeah, well, I
we
had
missed
a lot
you.
of other things to do.
Yeah.
And you were there. I was hoping to get some actual live footage from you last week, so I had a big frown on my face. But you made up for it today. So cool. I'm glad. So maybe if you remember some next things next week, love to hear more. Yeah, I forgot. I mean, obviously it's been a year, so my memory is faded already on the subject. But yes, I forgot how much of it. You know, what's funny is that I spent so much time outside, and then I had to give a talk as well there last year. When I finally got into the main pavilion, I didn't realize how much microcontroller stuff was in there, because I had just seen Intel and a few others that were on the outskirts. But that's where we concentrate. So I only got to go through it very quickly. Our friend, the great Fedini, was there last year doing scanning. I don't think he made it here this year, which was kind of fun. He actually scanned me. So I have a model of myself that he scanned. All right, Chris. Well, thank you very much. You actually, I guess, were our guest crasher today as well. Okay, so let's move on to our first item today. Hey, you remember this item?
And
Memento
I already went pro. I went pro.
Oh, look at that.
I had to try it out. I have so I've been using Memento for the last couple weeks on all kinds of projects, and then they did this and I'm like in the middle of doing a project, and they're like, guess what, we're live now with the pro version, and you can use the freebie one, and the free one's great, but the pro version is just so insane.
Well, we'll actually go through the features right now. So as Chris just mentioned, it has gone live. It has changed from the name. I don't think, in fact, we talked about it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't actually Remake at that point. They still hadn't determined, but Memento is now Remake, and it now has a price. And as I was hoping, the price would be affordable.
It is very
$20
affordable.
a month, or annually $190, or free depending on if you need all the features. So let's kind of run through the features.
It's worth the $200. Trust me. You don't have to wait in any queue anymore, and you can upload. Look at this. 50 gigapixel image beta feature, but you can do 1,000+ photo for photogrammetry. And I built an Arduino turntable for this, a little Arduino turntable that turns so I don't have to babysit and take photos anymore. I just hook it up, turn the intervalometer on, and let the camera do its deal. And I got some really, really good results with it this week. And yeah, I mean, it pays for itself in, you know, one single outing with it, really.
So you seem to be harboring a lot of these cool little things you've been working on, and we had the show where we're supposed to be talking about this kind of stuff. You know, what was it, around Christmas? I showed the $50 turntable, and you've actually improved upon that and kept it to yourself.
No, I just built it this week. I just built the turntable with an Arduino literally 2 days ago, and did this. And I used Memento, and it just made these beautiful models, and I shrunk them down and made this like really bitchin' jewelry. It's cool.
Well, Chris, you need to show us this stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of the stuff, you know, it's my job, and so I'm not privy to show it off. I can talk about it and tell you and kind of be rough about it, you know.
So you're saying that your Arduino-based turntable?
Oh, I can show you that. I can show you that. Okay,
All right, ready.
this is it. Super simple, right? And I'll put, once I get Rev 2 going, I should just put it on Thingiverse. So I built a little, I built the turntable. The turntable itself up here, the little platform's made out of alloy 910, which is incredibly awesome material Talman's put out, and I'm using it for a lot of different stuff. They're bridge nylon.
So you 3D printed it.
Yeah, I 3D printed the little turntable top. The bottom is NinjaFlex, because NinjaFlex is like this beautifully
We'll
dampening.
talk about that a little bit later because you're my NinjaFlex whisperer, but
yeah, well, yeah. So the NinjaFlex is great because it's dampening, so it dampens the vibration a little bit of the motor, but it also kind of has twofold. It actually sticks a little bit to the table too, because it's like that. So like the motor just rests right in this little. It just rests in this. The motor just
so you just
pops in there like that.
So that's a
little
stepper motor, correct?
That's just a little, a little NEMA 17, or which one is this? NEMA.
I've got a few of those.
Yeah, it's a NEMA 17 bipolar, hooked up to an Adafruit version 2 motor controller that's Shield, that's on top of a little red board, cheap Arduino. I'm starting to really go back to the Genuino, the actual genuine Arduinos, though, because I've been doing some projects with these kind of knockoff Arduinos, and they're just not as good. They're just not as good. And so you get what you pay for. Some of them are like, I mean, you can get Arduinos now for like $6, but they're not.
But like you said, then you need to really look at even, some of them are as good as the genuine, but you have to really look for them. If you're going to go out to eBay, forewarn, you're not always going to get what you expect. Yeah. But so you might want to pay a little extra.
I've been trying to use this new Arduino 101, which has a Intel Curie. So it's a 2-core. It's got a 2-core, and then and the cool thing about this particular one is you can actually, I think, like load basically like an IDE. You can run like the IDE. Oh, and this also has Bluetooth on board. So eventually what I want to do is make the turntable so I can have like an app on the phone or like some web interface, that's over Bluetooth. I don't know.
Maybe you should talk to an iOS developer.
Well, so like that's the thing with the iOS, right? Is you can go through all this trouble because I don't even have I don't even have a Mac in my office. I have a Mac at home, but I don't have a Mac in my office, and like you can't really develop iOS unless you have a Mac, right?
That's correct. So,
and so it almost makes
like
sense to
you
develop
can't.
it in,
period.
It makes a lot of sense to actually do what some of these other guys are doing, is develop it in HTML5, right? Do your app in HTML or JavaScript, and then you can add it as an app on your phone, the website, because you can do that out of Safari, right? You just go add an app, and it's HTML5. And then you don't have to worry about the App Store. It just runs it right through the internet.
Well, if it's simple, that works. But
right.
Sure. But yes, you are correct. I basically have a Mac Air, whatever they call the small one. That's what I use as my development station. So that way I can take it with me if I need to. But you are right. If you're an iOS, you need iOS Apple-based products, unlike Android, which works with Linux as well, their Android Studio. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. All right, so back to Remake. So as Chris mentioned, there are some features that you do not get with the free version, but if you want to start out, try it out. In fact, if I remember correctly, there is a promo period where you actually get the pro version before it drops down, and I don't remember the amount of time. So when you sign up or just install it and create yourself a user ID, you will have the pro version for a brief period of time, and this is the difference in features. So even though the free doesn't allow you to have as many images, doesn't have units and scale, which can be important if you want to bring your models into a particular area or measure them. But you know, as Chris and both of I have played around with it, we had, what was her name?
Tatiana.
Tatiana, what was she called herself? The 3D Whisper or something like that? I don't remember.
I don't know.
But we had her on last year when we went to Rio 2015, and obviously they've made a lot of improvements. I've actually used it the other day when I went and scanned some stuff at the Alcatraz, and actually put this to use. I said, oh, so if you don't even use it for photogrammetry, the actual mesh tools are pretty good. And one of the things that needs to be brought into mind is the reason they created this was to be able to support huge polygons. But the other thing this thing does is it creates tessellization and baking functions. So even if you don't have any purpose of ever doing photogrammetry, which I think you probably will, because it pushes it up in the cloud and uses their horsepower for it, and I'll talk about the actual requirements in a moment, but it has tools to be able to bake in and create a lower, I'm going to call it polygon resolution version if you want to go in that direction. So I thought that was a kind of cool feature. So they've really improved some of the actual editing tools without having to get into a true 3D editing tool. So down here, what do you need? If you're going to be doing them online, basically any machine with 4 gigabytes, it says a 64-bit system, 7 or more. Most people already have that. Multi-core processor. But if you want to use it for true editing, you obviously need to bump it up. But if you want to do it locally, this is where you need to have a monster machine, because minimum you need 64 gigs. I thought I had a lot at 32, but obviously here 64 is the minimum. 50 gigs worth of storage space, and then an NVIDIA GFX 4 gig card. And so happens NVIDIA, if we talked about, I talked about GTC. They had just put out the 1080, and people are raving about it. The beginning of June will be the 1070, which is still a hot performing card. It's just at a lower price, I think like $150. So both of those will easily handle it. But if you notice, if you want to move into super machine, they say either go with a Quattro or the GeForce. And as we talked about, Chris, one of the reasons you want to go with one of the more professional cards is because if you're using some of the CAD tools, they don't work as well with consumer-based machines. Now, have you already switched yours out? Have you gone back to a Quattro?
No, the Titan X, and my original, I think it's a 580, and now everybody's ranting and raving about the 1080. The 1080 is supposed to be the kingpin now. But the Titan X performs very well for me outside of SolidWorks. SolidWorks still, I need to get a Quadro card, because that's
what we talked about in one of our previous episodes.
I still haven't. I looked at them and I was like, oh, well, the one that I want is a little expensive. So I'm just kind of toughing through it. You know, SolidWorks does fine. It just crashes. And so I think my next workstation build, the other reality is, you know, SolidWorks, they've got to be working on cloud backend type stuff, because everybody is. Because the future, to me, at least this is my opinion, is the thin client, like Raspberry Pi, cheap, constantly updated, bare bones computer that you tap into the internet for cloud, and then real heavy tasks get done on scalable resources on the cloud. Because how often are you doing huge renders? Not that often. And when you are, you need to have computers that are way bigger than I can build, or way bigger than most people can afford. So the cloud really has a lot of benefits, but you got to make sure you have that beefy internet connection.
Yeah, and one of the things at GTC that was mentioned by the CEO was these new, they're Pascal-based processes, but they're blades so that you can use them in a situation like you're talking about. So more and more companies are going to these high-performance blade-type cards so you can stack many. Are you a fan of Silicon Valley? Have you heard of that?
Of Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
No, never heard of them.
Oh, well, it's an HBO show. If there's any
Oh,
reason,
Silicon Valley, the show. I thought you were joking. I thought you were being sarcastic. Like, have you heard
No.
of Silicon Valley? Oh yeah, yeah. The show. Don't spoiler alert, Mike.
No,
I
I'm
haven't
not.
watched the new season.
Okay. All right. I'll just mention there's one scene in there that's really great. They go into an enterprise data center, and
Yeah.
they have some fun with that.
Okay.
But you'll see it when I'm talking about. But
I'm
yeah,
looking
so
forward to the new
essentially,
season.
this
It's a fun show. That's a really good
I
nerd
love
show.
it.
If you're a nerd, then that is
yes.
like the show for you. It's a good
Well,
show.
I feel like I live that. But okay. So in your no, I don't know which character
They're
you are,
very
but,
and the thing I like about the show is they're very tech. They've got like some great writing, and obviously it's Mike Judge, right? Who's like
Yes.
he's like the best. That guy really has it figured out. He knows what's funny, and also what's the love the guy, the one of the main characters, the owner of the house, the actor's name. He's a comedian. Super Tim Lee, something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, he gets on my nerves a little bit. I like the guy that's kind of laid back, the long-haired guy. He's my favorite, I guess. Plus the lead CEO who, well, I'm not going to give anything up to you. Okay, so you've got a new item. Get back on track here.
Sure.
What do you have? So that was
So
Autodesk.
a couple weeks ago, we talked about this new slicer that's in the game, and they're Create It Real, and they want to be like this online, or I think it's an online slicer, but they want to compete with a lot of these slicers that are out there, and I think eventually probably compete with people like Simplify 3D. But they have this new feature called Create It Real, or Create It Real has a new feature called Real View in their slicer.
Full screen.
I'm going full screen. Let's go full screen.
Thank you.
And so this is their slicer. They talk about, how they have a few thousand users now, and so you can take the slice, and then you can print out this little pedestal thing, and then you can use your webcam for augmented reality.
Well, I appreciate you finding this. It was my choice of this one or the other one that I chose, and yes.
So you just print out that little cube, and that shows your computer can do relative positioning, obviously, and relative. It can actually, see how. So you can preview your model how big something is before you actually print it. So.
No, that's actually pretty cool. Obviously, you require a webcam, and it only uses your monitor. But I can see this going to a headset where you use the phone's camera, and you don a little cardboard or something, put that in front of your face, and that block, and you'll be able to see the entire scene in stereo or a pseudo stereo. So we'll probably see something like that in the future. And I have something to show later on that whole subject that I think will make you smile. Well, very cool. Okay, so my next item is, I touched on it that Shapeways took shipment of this particular item, and that is the HP Multijet Fusion 3D printer. But I didn't really touch on any of the features of it. So our friends over at 3dprint.com did a really nice article. Boy, there's a lot of junk on this particular one. So let me bring it up. Sorry, audience. But Sarah Anderson wrote this, and she does a really good job in writing some very complete articles. But so this is it. So if you remember when we talked about this, almost 2 years ago, and we said, couldn't wait. We thought it was going to be something that you and I could afford. Not. But they do think it's a groundbreaking technology and kind of a challenge to some of the other names, because the price of this is like $150,000 for the complete package, which, as you know, is not that much. I mean, you spent $60,000 on your Fortis 250?
Yeah, not that much.
Okay, well, but this is
that's how much they go new.
Yeah, so this is an SLS, or I'm assuming something like it's a powder-based nylon, so it's very similar to that, but it's supposedly 10 times faster. The pricing is, I don't know how much less, but less than buying some of the other competitors. And so this whole kit here costs you about $150. As mentioned, somebody like Shapeways, who lives and breathes SLS, probably, I didn't realize it was this cheap. So I can imagine not only getting your parts faster, but shouldn't cost anymore. I did not realize that when I had brought it up last week. So this will be a cool thing. Currently, they have it only in one color, my favorite color, which is black at Shapeways. So that's not a problem for me because I normally have to paint everything because it comes in white right now. So black would be fun. And if I can get it faster than what I'm getting right now, that would be even super. Sadly, I wish there were more. What was the name of that one company that did a Kickstarter and Indiegogo for an SLS? We need to go back and check on them, but it was like $6,000. I don't remember. I think you could get in like 3,500, but essentially it was a complete SLS, obviously smaller build form. But I should have gotten that. I wish I had. Oh well. Stop crying in my soup. So here's what you can get. There's two different models, the 4200 and the 3200. And what does it say? I don't remember exactly the difference between the two. Maybe as you do the rundown here. But these are the printing solutions. If you're not aware of it, because of the powder, you need a cleanup station, which is the unit on the right here. And so it's a very sophisticated, you need a not only a enclosed area because nylon powder gets everywhere. I don't remember if you actually listened to my interview with Kat Kincaid from Shapeways, gosh, over 2 years ago, but she says this gets everywhere in places that you don't even want to talk about. So this stuff, they have to wear these hazmat suits when they're actually in this environment because this stuff gets everywhere. So this is one of the reasons you can't just buy the unit unless you already have a cleaning system. It's an all-in-one. So even though they indicate you can get it for less without it, you don't really want to do that.
It's not going to be usable.
Correct. So Disrupt, actually, it's 120 if you want just the system, 145K for the entire system. And then they talk about who they're partnering with for materials. And then as mentioned already, they have already delivered to Shapeways in the Netherlands. So you'll have to wait a little bit longer if you're in the US for, I think, their Brooklyn site to get one. But Proto Labs, I use them. They're more expensive, but they're if you're trying to finalize for a final end product and you need a in-between or intermediate stage, I highly recommend them. They have a lot of great people on staff that can help you out, and their tools, even their online tools, give you a lot of information on your model to make sure it supports injection molding and things like that. So I guess here's some of the parts. Looks like a flexible part. And then they have a little flow chart here of the whole process. So, you know, we have talked about the HP for some time, and then eventually it kind of fell off the radar because it kept being delayed and delayed. But it does look like, as they indicated, it was not going to be a consumer-based printer, but an industrial or enterprise type printer, which it is, and I think it will be a changer in the market. So good. It's, you know, I know that we've got Stratays and 3D System right now, and I think there's a couple of others, but I think their model needs to shift, and it's people like this that help infuse new blood and start changing things. Obviously, there was some disruption with small consumer type printers, but I think, as you may or may not agree, takes a certain amount of talent and skill to be able to get a 3D printer working reliably over and over again, and some skills and actually to create components for it. So it's not for everybody, and I think we've found that out. But glad that there are services like Shapeways, and glad there are people like HP and Stratays and 3D Systems creating the big boy systems. So even if you've got a small one, you can always scale up to much better quality parts that you could never have done before. So I look forward to getting some parts from this and showing them off in the near future. All right, Chris, what's your next item?
Okay, cool. Well, this one is a company that recently came on the scene for me. Matter Hackers has theirs, and they rant and rave about how this new printer is basically revolutionizing dual material. And this company is called BCN 3D. They've got I think it's an Italian company, and they have this BCN 3D Sigma design. It's a new, and they have decided to open source it with a GPL version 3 license and a CERN open hardware license. So they just open sourced their machine, I think today or yesterday. And so they're rolling out docs. Here's a look at the machine,
Oh, they have their
the boards, and what
AutoCAD or PK
separates, what separates their dual extrusion machine, I guess, as far as single material extrusion, it's pretty run of the mill. It's not anything special, as far as how great the quality is or anything like that. According to people that I've talked to that run these machines, I've been testing on them, but it's the cream of the crop when it comes to dual extrusion. So if you want to do soluble support, it's a really good way to go. And so it's the BCN 3D Sigma machine. And I guess you can head over to bcn3dtechnologies.com and you can check out their products.
So from that image that you have showing right now, that looks like the dual heads. It's kind of interesting. The heads are that far apart.
Well, that's because those heads, one goes off to the side while you're printing. So that's one of the problems that is with dual extrusion is they try, like a lot of the companies, Lulzbot included. I've tried the dual extruder that they had, the dually extruder that they had for the TAS 5, and what happens is, and this is the rest of the companies, one of the drawbacks is no matter how well calibrated you are, both those heads are as level as you can get. So while you're printing one material, and then then you switch to the other material, the head drags, the other head is dragging across your print as you're printing. And so it causes problems. It makes your prints kind of dirty. It doesn't make really high quality models, which is kind of the whole point of printing the soluble support or breakaway support or whatever you're doing. This BCN 3D machine, the secondary material head moves over to the side, you print, so it's moving around like in the X and Y, but that head's over to the side. Then when it switches to the other one, that one goes over to the side and the other one comes in and starts printing.
So how much does it add to the time of the prints? Because that takes time.
That I don't know. That I don't know. But I think I did see some really good examples of kind of what E3D refers to as the Cyclops. I think it's the Cyclops is one head, and I saw Mosaic was there at the MakerFaire, showing off. They're shipping their Kickstarters now, and their prints. So they're mixing the model or mixing the materials. They have 4 materials that come into the unit, and then it fuses them together, and then passes them into one nozzle. So that's one way. But the thing, so Mosaic, the
was
guys
that color? Was that a color?
Yeah, their palette program or the palette. So
yeah, I remember we had them on.
Yeah, we've had them on, but so what? A lot of the designs that I see that are really good multi-material are going through a single nozzle, multiple materials. So E3D has a nozzle that does that. Mosaic Manufacturing has the palette. Mosaic says that the problem is that the soluble support and the ABS or PLA, whatever you're printing, don't fuse well together. And so that causes problems fusing it if you're going to do something like what Mosaic does. But I saw the Atom printer. They actually have a 2 material into one nozzle design. And they have a new 2.5 model coming out of their Delta printer, the company Atom. And but this BCN 3D is I think a really kind of brilliant design, and the guys over at Matter Hackers have been testing with it, and they're saying that it's pretty incredible.
Well, it makes sense. And I know that the Fortis 250 is a dual head design too, and one of them is a soluble. I'm assuming, can you run other materials besides soluble, or?
Nope, not on the Fortis 250. The Fortis 250 is like engineering grade ABS, soluble support, and they're chipped. And there's guys that try to hack them, and there's a company that actually makes material, Argyle Materials, but it gets wishy-washy with warranty stuff running other companies.
In your case,
in my case, it's not worth it.
Exactly. In your case, yours went down for the first time in many months.
Yep.
And they were there to fix it.
Tech came and fixed it. He pulled it apart, put new motors in. I didn't have to touch it, thank God, because that thing's a beast. You get in there, it's really a lot more complicated than most of these printers, most of these other FDM printers. The thing's got a lot of guts going on in there. So, yeah. So the bcn3d.com or bcn3dtechnologies.com. Go check out that printer. It's pretty cool, and I can't wait to delve into these documents and kind of take a look at how this is working. Maybe build a variation of it. I don't know.
Mr. Builder there.
I love building these things, man. I know. I love the Arduino. I got to see Massimo. Massimo gave an update on the state of Arduino too. And
cool.
Yeah, like I said, actually I can just briefly touch on that. If you head over to Arduino Create is their new cloud-based IDE. So it's create.arduino.cc, and I can pull it up here.
And make sure that link is put in our show notes.
Yeah, and so you can actually go on. They have an Arduino web editor, and they're building with Google a Chrome plugin that passes directly through to USB. So you can actually program. And what's great is they actually have, fritzing. Have you ever done fritzing? Use the program fritzing? No. It's kind of in conjunction with Arduino, other electronics, other PMCs. Fritzing lets you build documentation of your wiring, so you can actually show, they call it fritzing, and this is fritzing. I'll show you, I'll give you an example. You've definitely seen it in documentation. So this is fritzing. This is what fritzing looks like over here. And so you can see some of the projects from fritzing. So if somebody wires something up that's really complicated or even not so complicated, but you just want to document it to show somebody how you built it and how you wired it on your breadboard, or if you want to teach somebody how to wire something and they don't know anything. This is actually how I learned. But building all of these little grid layouts, trying to do that in like Photoshop or Illustrator, it would be just a tremendous amount of work. This snaps your breadboard wires. You just run your wire, you tell it what color. And so I use fritzing all the time. So one of the cool things about Arduino Create is they've actually built in something like fritzing. I don't know if it is fritzing or not, but they've built that in. So you can build your documentation and your code at the same time. And it's all on the cloud. They have, I think, version revisioning type stuff. So you can save different versions. And
I'm assuming that it's collaborative. So if you wanted to release it to the public, like Umagine, or what's the other one? I already forgotten their name. Like
not Thingiverse.
MakerBot version, Thingiverse. I guess that's what you can do here. Use the cloud and then make it available through the cloud for others.
Exactly. And you can push your code, and then so like the idea is that like somebody could download your project, wire it up exactly how you have it on your display, and then they could load the code. And then there's a community, so like you could comment like on that project. You could have discussions or even like support or chat or with the creator themselves. So I think it's a really cool thing that they've done. So that's kind of like the latest thing. They just rolled that out in beta. They have early signups for create.arduino.cc.
Wow. Gosh, make sure that gets in there. I want to sign up for that. Okay, so I'm going to move on to my next item. And this actually may benefit you more than it benefits me because I don't have a Fortis. But GrabCAD Print is something that just came on the market. or actually it's not even available yet. You can sign up for it. But essentially, it's another cloud-based function that provides slicing, but it's from our friends over at Stratays in conjunction with GrabCAD. I use GrabCAD all the time. I can pull down models. I've added models. It's for engineers, students, and designers. And obviously, Chris, you probably have used it. But now you can take your models straight from GrabCAD and bring them into kind of a slicer. It's a 3D print preparation, checks your models, even if you bring in STLs to make sure that they're print worthy. So it kind of combines a lot of tools that I use into one. Sadly, this is not for a consumer. If you look down on the bottom here, and actually I apologize, audience, I didn't switch screens, so here's the top of it. So it's Stratays and GrabCAD. Here are the features, but currently only supports what do you want to call it? Professional type printers, Uprints, Fortis.
250s on there.
Yep. So, Chris, if you haven't already tried it, I guess
I have not yet.
And I didn't have
They even have an
price
app for the phone. They even have like an app for the phone that you can like.
Yeah. To identify when your prints. Yep. So.
Which like I don't even have that on the back end. Like nobody even told me from Stratays or my reseller that this is here. It's like I found out about it today from the show notes, and I was like,
"From my show notes,
what did Mike show? What's Mike?" Yeah, so I've just found out about it, and like I'm just learning about it right now. So this is actually really kind of exciting for me.
Well, I wanted to put it in there more for you. Obviously, they are going to have more printers. Hopefully, they'll support consumer-based or prosumer-based printers, but it's a start. And if you're in the market, as you just indicated, because it's cloud-based, you can obviously monitor it from the cloud. You can, as you just mentioned, there is an app for this so that you'd be able to monitor your prints remotely. Yeah, so I think that's kind of cool. And obviously, I'd like to know more about this. I did sign up to see more information, but obviously Chris has a better use for it and actually can give us an example of it maybe in the next show or the show
next week. I'll have, if they made the control center for these printers online, I would really like that because there's some issues I have with like the Windows version of some of these things. So like it seems like they're kind of bringing it up to the next version.
Well, looks like it, and in conjunction with GrabCAD. What I can think is kind of cool is that, most slicers, you have to go from STL to the slicing functionality. This supposedly will take 3D CAD files, so I'm assuming STEP and ISIS type files, not ISIS. What's the other one?
AMF files.
No,
or OBJ?
No, those are all mesh files, actual 3D CAD
files. Oh,
IGES or... Thank you, IGES. Yeah, IGES. So I'm assuming that these will take those kind of directly into it and convert them into a slice, which I haven't seen before. So that would be kind of neat if we go directly in, if you bring a step into it. I have to assume that to be the case because a lot of the models in GrabCAD are only in those formats, or SolidWorks View or something like that, or SolidWorks Print. So hopefully that'll be the case. That would be kind of cool, especially if they provide reliable models. Save some time. So I knew that that might be of interest to you. Hopefully in the future it'll be of interest to other people. So why don't we move on to... I put an item down, and I've got a video to show. I thought this was really cool. And before I do so, let me bring up, we are now in the section of 3D design, architecture, and engineering. And I thought this was super cool. As you know, Dubai has a tendency to do a lot of things first. We still have the tallest building. But this is a fully 3D printed. Now, I know that China has created several buildings, but this one actually looks fairly polished.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. There we go.
How about, okay. So as I was saying, this is created and printed in in Dubai. But as you can see, this is a very, I don't know if these are renders, but this is very polished. If you saw the exterior, it kind of looks like a very futuristic environment. These are people, it actually exists. So you could actually move in if you wanted to into your new office. The article, which I will bring up. Let's see, will I bring it up?
These are renders, correct?
No. Some of them are renders, but some of those are not renders. It actually exists. They just finished it. And I don't seem to have. Oh, well. So, well, the video there, there is several videos out there already. Just look up Dubai and you can see for yourself. I like this video because it gives you multiple views, the interior. But let me see if I can bring it up. Wow. Did I skip it? Man, okay, here we go. Let me bring it up, and then we can actually. Oh, that's okay. The reason that I had skipped it is because I put it under your name. So I looked at several articles, but this one had the most complete static images, which will be in the show notes of what this thing looks like. So yes, these do look like renders. But these aren't. So these actually are the interior of this design. So it is completed. Kind of neat, huh?
Very cool. Chic.
Chic. No pun intended.
Oh, I didn't even mean that. I did not mean that like that. But that's pretty good. That's a pretty good pun. Wow. So what, obviously Dubai has a tendency to do a lot of things first because obviously they have lots of money. But in this case, the cost of 3D fabricating, I don't know if this particular article indicates it, but it was actually cheaper to do it in this manner than it was to use standard fabrication and construction. In fact, most of the cost was assembling all the interior, like electrical and so forth, not the actual outer surface. So then the printer, one of the other articles talks about, was really large, and which we've seen before. More than likely, it's a gantry system with a very large concrete extruder. Here we go. It says that open after less than 1 month of launching 3D print strategies. So I assume it took about a month to make this thing. Longer than that. But what I kind of like is that it has a nice organic shape to it with curves. Normally some of the things that we've seen from China are very right-angled, squarish. This is very organic in its appearance and very polished. So I don't know if that's people smoothing it after the fact. Obviously, if it's a standard FDM type technology, it probably was. But regardless, it looks pretty nice. I wouldn't mind moving into that. Oh, yeah, pretty cool.
Just make that my home. That's an idea. Get the first 3D printed home. Oh, well, pretty neat. I thought that would be something interesting to look at. So
Awesome.
what's your next item?
Okay. Well, this is a new report that came to me from watech.com. And it's a new report that examines the 3D printing materials market that is estimated to grow from 530 million in 2016 this year to 1.5 billion, almost 1.4 billion in 2021, which is only 5 years at a compound annual growth rate of 21.6%, which is just absolutely this is what they're estimating. And obviously you have to take all these like speculative reports kind of to with a grain of salt, but this is like, this is like bona fide market research that they like. This is like a, using existing data, and the actual market research report is obviously found at the link that we'll include in the show notes. So this is just a synopsis of the article. But they're saying that like a lot of the, because of the aerospace industry, but also mostly medical and dental is huge because maxillofacial and tissue engineered products, prosthetics and implants, orthopedic and dental and surgical equipment are manufactured using 3D printing technology. So huge areas that we're seeing explosive growth in the materials market. This is mostly considering just the growth in the materials that the 3D printers themselves are using, over a it'll be almost a threefold growth in 5 years, they're saying. So there's going to be a gaping hole in the market. This is a good time to get into material research and finding out how to recycle, how to make things out of, how to make new materials. Eastman Kodak has been pouring massive amounts of money into the into making new 3D printing materials. The engine material, which I've really learned to love, had a couple issues with it because the enclosure that I built changes a lot of things, especially how the extruder behaves with materials. So, but I can talk about that next week. And so incredible growth going on.
I totally agree with you. So, I want to talk a little bit more about Polymax when we get into the Print Whisperer, because Polymaker. As you know, I've been a Polymax fan for 2 years now. But, we talked a little bit about that finishing material, that smooth finish. I think you had actually a chance to see it in action. So when we get to the Print Whisperer, let's talk a little bit more about that. All right, well, let's move on to 3D in medicine. Da-da-da. And I've got a couple of items, one and a little video to show, which is actually on the website. So you won't get any audio, which is probably a good thing. But let me bring that up. This is a CNBC article, so hopefully they don't take me down. But this is not, in my opinion, something new, but obviously there has been a lot of work, and we've talked about a lot of it, where you can use basically virtual dissection or virtual surgery by, in this case, they used a system, I think it's Stellar HP. Let's see, gets into it. But this particular company, come on, let's get to some. Actually, did I skip the article? They must have moved on to a different one. But this particular one was using what they call it holographic look. But if you remember, I had a system, actually still have it, that allowed me, by donning stereo pair of glasses, they're essentially either shutter or you have to use a particular screen, which I think is the case here, that has polarized lenses. So it gives you a stereo view, so the objects project out of it. You remember I had a system like that, Chris? And then they have these sensors built into it on the sides that track your head movement. So you can move your head around, so you can look around an object that's projected from your screen because of the stereo viewing. And then you have a pen, like what they're showing here, to be able to move these objects in this space. Says literally you're in space moving an object. So I remember I gave you a demo of that. Now that was an earlier version. This is from, let's see if it tells you what the product is. It's been on the market, and I actually saw this at Awe, and I think I did an interview with them, but it's a little expensive, like $2,000 to $3,000, but it includes the LCD panel. It's all built in. But the big point is they're now utilizing this by taking CT scans and be able to literally move, and I don't know, the video, for whatever reason, jumped to something other than what I needed. But the literally showed, like in this case here, animations as they were moving, and like you can see the tip of the pin here, pointing to something, moving that object out of the way. Let's say, in this case, part of the bowel system. I don't know what we got there. Is that a kidney? Yes. So you could like move the kidney or slice the kidney. Um, there was an example here in the brain where they were able to move something out of the way. So I thought that was pretty cool, and it gives the ability for people to, I guess, virtually create surgery. Now, obviously, this is based on a single monitor and gives the illusion of depth by providing polarized images. Now, imagine donning a headset and doing the same thing with, let's say, the HTC Vive. So I have a feeling that this company may be moving in that direction. I went out to their website. It's called EchoPixel, and it's very vague. So it's like many of these medical business. There's nothing like you can download and try out. You essentially have to call somebody, and normally that means a lot of money. But the fact is that it's happening. I'm assuming that we'll see more and more in this area. But the ability to be actually see an object in front of you, let's say somebody's brain, and be able to peel back things, I think is a really cool. And one of the things that they identify here for residents, it's very important as they're learning anatomy to be able to see things in 3D, and they think that'll reinforce it. And then I have a little bit more to talk about, something that I have been working on and showing off at Stanford a little bit later in the Spelunking and the Tech Cave, but along these lines. But I can see this all converging pretty soon, and maybe a lot of this will be shown at AWE, which is one of the shows that is going to be coming up in June. So I have one more other item that I want to bring up, and the only reason I know about this is because my dentist, Dr. Dan Kopp, which we've had on the show before, said he just got it, and I didn't actually get to see it, but he was telling me about it. They've got the brand new iTero Element, which is a self-contained system, unlike the previous version, which you had to have a separate PC. This is all nice and contained. The scanning is more precise, and more importantly, it's faster. And the reason it's faster, in the past, you took separate snapshots. Now it takes continuous shots like video, and then actually does the stitching in real time, which was not the case before. So like if you've seen me doing 3D scanning with the structure sensor, it does the stitching in real time too. So you literally compile a model as you're moving it. So you get not only visual cues as you're in somebody's mouth, but you can actually have a much more accurate model. And here they talk about, they talk about how many times it's used. So a big benefit of this system is you no longer have to have those molds. You remember, I don't think you were on the episode, or were you, that we talked about the guy who created his own Invisalign? Okay,
yeah,
well, did you know that because of that project, he now has a job at Formlabs? You missed that episode, but he got a job out of that. So he now works for Formlabs.
That's pretty so awesome.
I didn't get a job when I printed my teeth here. Oh, well. But so I thought this is kind of neat. So you may be seeing that at a dentist near you, especially if they're cutting edge. It is sort of pricey. So I don't know if this drives up the cost, but it sure saves time on their part. They can get this done. Dr. Dan Kopp is kind of techie. So if you live in the San Luis Obispo area and you're watching our show, head out to Dr. Dan Kopp, because he's got the latest and greatest dental tech tools, especially in the 3D realm. But this was something that was shown off. So Chris, let's kind of move on, because you got something, you talked about it in 3D Medicine for new materials. Let's get into Scanner Darkly. And I got a couple items there. Let's see, do you have something? Yes. Oh,
well, I just wanted to
Autodesk
talk
Remake.
about, Autodesk Remake. I just have to reiterate how absolutely great it's just amazing what it does. It takes photos of you just take photos and you put it into this thing, send them up to the cloud, and in, under an hour, you've got beautiful full color scans, and you don't need to buy any expensive scanner anymore. And I understand there's still probably a place for some of these other scanners, but to be honest, I've had experience with some of these like laser scanners, depth sensing scanners, and the quality of the Memento or this Remake product easily rivals everything that those do, plus has an entire suite of tools to kind of fix, edit, and sculpt the meshes. So it's a great product. And for under $200 for a year subscription to the Pro, and it'll it'll crunch over 1,000 photos for a 50 gigapixel scan. I mean, it's mind-boggling product to me. So check it out at Autodesk Remake. Just type in Autodesk Remake and check it out.
Well, and as you know, Chris, we've covered photogrammetry several times. You've got it, you just talked about your Arduino-based turntable. Yeah, in fact, Autodesk has had a product called, what was it called? Catch? Yeah, 3D Catch that they've had for iPhones and Android for over a year. Now that does the same thing on a less level, but now if you've got high resolution cameras, you can utilize something that can take care of it. We also talked about some standalone products that have also been out, but they're a little bit more pricey and they have a fixed cost. Oh. Okay. I didn't think I was that funny. No, just kidding. But so yes, I totally agree with you. However, the problem with photogrammetry, and getting back into Scanner Darkly, is that photogrammetry takes time. So yes, you can snap the shots, but unless you've got several cameras, that can be somewhat time intensive. And even though you can throw them up in the cloud because it's very computational, it's not in real time. So there's still always going to be a market for depth sensing type devices, laser scanners that can provide real-time capture. But if you've got a fancy system with multiple cameras, you can capture things in real time. It just takes time to compute them. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, let me see if I can get to it. Where is it? Okay. Is that we've talked about them several times. In fact, I've used their product. It's called Itzy's 3D. And Itzy's 3D is made for the iOS structure sensor, and it allows you to capture using the depth sensing, but captures very great texture maps from the actual RGB camera itself. So it kind of made a name for itself. But they also built a similar product for the RealSense sensor for Intel. Now I found, comparing the two, that the Intel RealSense, and I haven't gone back to it, left a lot to be desired because it was using the RealSense RGB camera, which is nowhere near the quality. In fact, I think it's just a 1080p versus a 13 megapixel camera that's built in some of the newer iPhones. However, that is not what we're talking about here. Obviously, they must have introduced them to what else Itzy does. They are a Russian-based company. Itzy also, and I guess they now have a San Francisco branch, and maybe they actually split off and became an American-made company. But they also do computer vision, namely, like many companies, automatic driving. Or whatever they call it, autopilot driving. But essentially, they bought out that particular portion of the company so that they could utilize some of their algorithms in their own computer-based, what do you want to call it, vehicle, auto vehicle, whatever, autonomous vehicles, there you go. So we may see more in that area. And they do identify that they had two other companies, FaceSense for facial recognition and the Itzy 3D product, which still stands as a separate company. But the 3D vision stuff is all now part of Intel. So there's a lot of people in this area. Obviously, that looks like a Tesla symbol there. By the way, I didn't know this, but it appears that the computational system in the Teslas is made by a company that I talked about before, which is the NVIDIA. So there may be a P100. Actually, I don't remember if that's the nomenclature, but you might be seeing the new chip that's in your graphics computer inside your car. So a 1080, it's very similar. It's a Pascal base, and we talked about it to provide the, what do you want to call it, the computational power required to do computer vision and provide that information to the autonomous system. But I did not know it was NVIDIA that was in there. So kind of cool. All right, so that's about it for our 3D in scanning, our Scanner Darkly section. So let's kind of move on to VR Corner, and I've got several items here. And let's see where we'll start. I thought this was kind of neat. This is, let's get to it. Where is it? Here we go. And I'll jump right to it. I thought this was kind of neat. In my opinion, a very interesting application for using virtual reality. But imagine being on a jury and the attorney or the judge says, now put on your VR headset. Yes, that's what we might be coming to. They are now going to be reenacting crime scenes through a virtual environment. So could you imagine that? Be able to actually, I don't know, might be good or bad, but currently you, and here I guess is a little video, some people have created, in fact, I knew a guy back in the late 80s, early 90s who actually did this, where he created renders of a crime scene and then created animations, and they showed this in court for like vehicle accidents and so forth. But imagine having the same kind of thing where you have a VR presence. So you're literally can be standing in the scene itself. It kind of gives you a much better presence of what actually occurred than otherwise. But the problem I see with this is, what if you get something wrong? I mean, because of the presence of virtual reality, you could be influenced by that much more strongly than a 2D image.
Yeah, like they could just put an image of OJ in there, you know, and it's like, it's like
exactly. Well, let's be biased here. Let's say a man of a darker skin color in the image, so you would immediately make implications of OJ in that particular case. But it could be, let's say you. So yes, there could be all kinds of visual cues and biases.
That sounds like wishy-washy, circumstantial type stuff that doesn't seem like it would hold water in court at all.
But that's not the issue, though. Is it's the jury that's making the decision.
No, I know. I'm saying even to introduce this to a to a trial seems like so wishy-washy to me. Like VR, using VR and 3D scenes to this seems wishy-washy. Like, just keep it. Like, if they were going to use VR at all, I would say take a 3D image of the scene as it is, and then you put.
I was going to mention that.
That would be okay, I think. But and
we covered that. They are actually, I think,
they're like putting people in it. Guilty.
But no, I agree with you, and they have been doing that where they scan. In fact, somebody in Florida has outfitted their county sheriff's department with a scanning system so that they scan the entire environment. But yes, then you could take that environment and put it into a system like this, put a person at the crime scene based upon what they're seeing. So you could say, come look at this evidence. And like you said, that would be it wouldn't be a subjective 3D visualization. That would actually be the crime scene taken at the time of the scan. But then, it's like anything else. You could doctor it. You could throw in a little scene. Oh, where'd that handgun come from? I don't know. That's a 3D model I got from a game. No, just kidding. But I could see how we'll have a new interesting perspective of photoshopping in VR. Oh, well, lots of things, but I thought that was kind of cool, and it was the first time that I'd seen that. In fact, it wasn't through my normal scouring. It came up somewhere else. But I have that, and then let's see what else I've got. Oh, I thought this is kind of neat. And again, this is something that came up elsewhere. And even though this site does not actually create 3D models that you can view, they have a series of images, and let me bring one up, of multiple types of bugs. So I had contacted them. Luckily, they're in Germany. So when I contacted them late last night, it was daytime for them. So I got some immediate responses. So currently, they do not provide 3D models, but I was thinking this might be a good test of Memento, now Remake. And you can get these series of images and throw them in there. The problem is, as you're probably aware of, your background doesn't change. Now, I'm trying to remember.
It doesn't matter.
It does not matter anymore, correct?
Doesn't matter.
Only thing that could be of concern is that some of these objects have reflective surfaces, but even then, there's been improvement. So I'm looking forward. Like I said, I do have a series. I'll actually put it out on my G drive and let you have a go at it too, since you have the Pro version. Because I can't remember it. I think it exceeds the 10 gigabytes. 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 the free version. But
Well, one of the
since
cool
I
things
have-
about the Pro version is you don't have to wait in the queue anymore. As soon as you press go, it starts processing it.
well, and I don't know if you get that feature when you first try it or not, but
Plus, I'm kind
like
of
I said-
excited to try the local crunch that you can do now.
well, but
Crunch
you
stuff
saw
locally.
you don't have a machine capable of it, Chris. You need 64 gigs.
Yeah, I've got 64.
You do?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, you could. I'm not. I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
well, back
worth
to
a
these.
try. Yeah.
So even though they don't do 3D, they have these little tools that allow you to change the rotation up and down. So they captured these at a very high resolution, but because they rotated around just like you would do it for photogrammetry, I could see possibly creating models of this, then turning around and turning it into a cube mat or a sphere, and then bring it into like NVIDIA Viewer. So I don't know if you were there when I talked about the NVIDIA Viewer, but with that being the case, you could have, with Google Cardboard, the ability to actually see one of these in very high detail in front of your eyes and rotate it and spin it and move your head around to get different views of it. So I see that being cool. Or let's say putting on the HTC Vive. And again, I apologize, audience. I didn't switch cameras, but here are the actual shots. But there are a multiple series of these high resolution shots that you could then turn into, using photogrammetry, into models, and then convert them into a photosphere to be able to show in something like the NVIDIA VR viewer. So I see a lot of potential there, and I will be trying that. So maybe next week I'll be able to show that off. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then we talked about Remake already. So hey, I think we're actually in the VR corner, aren't we? Where are we at?
Project
So
Arena.
you've got something. So why don't we jump
This
back
is
to
kind
you?
of cool. This is just physicality and spectatorship. This is Road to VR. In Project Arena, could blur the line between esport and actual sport. This is a game that they came up with. Let's see an image. It's like Tron kind of thing, but it's like real tennis or something, like a real sport that you play in your living room. I mean, we're going to see more and more kind of exercise type things like this. This is cool. You don't have to leave your home to play tennis or even be a Tron.
Yeah, but sadly, Chris, you bought the wrong one.
Oh, because it's only for HTC Vive.
Yeah, but I have heard, because Verge did a nice comparison. They had one of their, I guess you can't call it, their writers did a nice little video comparison. Actually, it was kind of fun. They did a split image, but it seemed very seamless of her talking to herself, and she had the Vive on, and she had the Oculus on, and she was like debating herself on which one was better. But what I thought was kind of neat about it is that, as I've known already, the HTC Vive, because of its light towers, has the ability to move around in space. Now, Oculus says that their handsets are going to be coming out soon, and they will have another camera to give it larger area to move around it. So you will have similar capability. Something you may not know, and some people may not be aware of, the Vive has to have the camera set up in front of it. There is nothing behind the headset. So if you turn your head around, it loses track of you. So kind of keep that in mind. Now, that is not the case, and I found this out when I was doing something, I don't remember, analyzing the Oculus. It actually has emitters in the headband itself. So if you turn your head, you don't lose tracking. So you could literally turn around and it will still be able to track your head in positional space, which I think was a positive. And Chris is saying he's got to run soon, so we're going to go ahead and get into one more item on my VR, then into his Print Whisper, and then I've got a couple of great items to cover as well. So you're going to have to come back and see my Unreal Engine demo. But now you've lost my train of thought there, Chris. So, but other than that, those features will be coming to the Oculus Rift probably at the end of the year, if not sooner. Okay, so here's something that's cool. You were talking about doing exercise. This is a company out of Sweden. Now, if you remember, some time now, actually since June, I have been able to walk around in a VR space because I put the structure sensor on, and with something they call unbounded tracking, or as I call environmental awareness virtual reality, I could move around in an iPhone. Now, this company says that they'll be able to create something very similar to that without anything but just the camera built into the unit itself. Now, I didn't see any real demos. There's this little one here, but it doesn't really show him moving around much. But it does show graphically that as he moves around a little bit, you can see as he moves his head around where the camera is tracking. So it's not a very sophisticated demo. And then here's another one, which I'll go ahead and run, that shows him moving up to the scan of the desk. Now keep in mind, this is just with the camera in the phone itself, no external sensors. So I don't know how much there is as far as limitations, but it does appear to be working, which would be very, very cool, because what is normally used is either use stereo cameras to provide the parallax, to provide the parallax information to be able to provide information in 3D, or a sensor to determine its three-dimensional space. But in this case, they're using a single camera and the IMUs to help determine where it's in space. Now, if I went out, other than that, there isn't any demos, there is no software. And if you go out to their contact or jobs place, they're looking for people with expertise in this. So they probably have a sample, but they don't have any real tangible products other than what's in their lab. But if this is the case, this will be very, very cool, because then you don't need anything extra. And even if it's a small area, just for maybe head positional tracking, this would still be super cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing more on this. And you weren't here when I covered it last week, but we had a company who's created a mobile Connect-like device that works over Bluetooth that sends the information back to the headset to give you, was it 19 positions of movement? So it could track your hands and your legs, all for a very reasonable price of, I think it was like $135, $170. And they have a Indiegogo, I think, or a Kickstarter going on right now. So if you're interested in doing multi-tracking, go back and look at our previous episode. All right, Chris, let's jump into your print whisper so you can get out of here, and then I will follow up and end the show.
Awesome. Well, today I wanted to talk about the creative, it's kind of in the spirit of the Maker Faire, what I saw going on at the Maker Faire. And I know everybody comes up, it's kind of like writer's block. Everybody kind of comes up to sometimes a wall of, you don't feel super creative, or you feel like you can't create. So what does it take to invent or create, and how do you overcome these roadblocks? Especially, you've got a 3D printer now, you ordered it, or you built one, and you built some trinkets maybe from Thingiverse, you're building other people's designs, but you want to build more. You bought the thing because you want to make your own stuff and you want to create your own thing. And so how do you do it? And well, what I like to do is remember that most inventions are not what's considered a novel invention. A novel invention being that it's like overcomes it. It's a totally new thing that's never been done. Most inventions are not that. Most inventions are just taking a piece of technology over here and a piece of technology over here, super simple little innovations. And all they do is combine two things, or they even just take an existing invention and apply it to a different market or a different application. And so it doesn't take much, but a lot of times what you have to do first is you have to identify a problem. So, I showed earlier the little turntable, the little Arduino. I needed a little turntable. I had Arduinos. I had a motor sitting around, and I just needed to, but I wanted, the problem I identified was, the problem was it takes me a lot of time to do the 3D scans because I have to sit there and click the camera and rotate the object by hand. Well, that was the inspiration between 3D printing and coding up a little Arduino turntable that'll automatically do it for me. So that was my inspiration. So engineers always start with a problem. So identify a problem that you have, an inefficiency in your workflow, something that you see in your day, that's a problem that you could tackle. And it could be big, but it could also be small. It doesn't have to be like a world-changing thing. But also, if it's something that you wanted to maybe sell or something like that down the road, is it practical to develop? Is it worth the time and effort, or, for your toothbrush cleaner or whatever you're going to come up with? And one thing I will tell you is smaller models, smaller things to work on often are cheaper and better to learn about how things fit together. It's better to work on models that are small, because your 3D printer can print them a lot faster and it uses a lot less material. So even if you're going to do a big project, a lot of times it makes sense to scale it down and do a scale model of what you're doing. And so inventions that I've been working on, I told you the Arduino project that I worked on this week. Another product that I'll show you, or one thing that I really like, is those 3M has these products called command strips. You've probably seen them like at the whatever mart you shop at. They sell these little strips that are, they don't damage your wall. You don't need nails. You don't need staples. They let you hang and they're really strong, actually, surprisingly strong. I have these, I just recently put one of these broom ones up, and it works perfectly. So I'm trying to incorporate these non-damaging things into kind of I just redid a little kitchenette at my office, and I'm just kind of making little holders for things using these little command strips, because they work really good. And that's my little invention for the week. And then another one, another invention that I'll talk about next week is going to be, I come from the print world, printing on t-shirts. So I've done a lot of sublimation, screen printing, that stuff. I grew up in a screen printing company doing that. And sublimation is this amazing process that I've used for many years, and you can print on polymers and all kinds of stuff. And experimenting this week, my invention is full color. I want to sublimate on some 3D prints and see how it goes. So,
I'd love to see that.
Just go out there, innovate. Yeah, you had a sublimated
printer back before you had inkjets. So I had one that was
not sublimation like what you're talking about. You're talking about ribbon sublimation for a photo printer, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is similar process. I mean, sublimation is the process of they consider it the process of going from liquid to a gas vapor, and that gas vapor can permanently dye objects.
What they do with the version that I had is they heat up this
ribbon
film, and then it
so sublimation, when it comes to textiles or printing onto, if you look at the bottom of a snowboard, right, how you see that really vibrant color, or when they print onto fabric and you see really vibrant fabrics like microfiber polyester at a trade show stretched over something that's really vibrant color. That's they use a process of sublimation, but what they do is they have sublimation inks inside of an inkjet printer. It's a special ink, and then it prints on a carrier sheet, special kind of paper. It's not really sublimation paper. They have some that are sublimation papers, but then they heat transfer that on to whatever. It has to have some sort of poly content into it for a fabric, but you can also people are doing it onto wood, so polyurethane coated wood, because it's anything with poly in it. So you can sublimate. The options are endless. So I want to do it because all of the material we use is poly. So try to sublimate onto that. So that'll be my invention this week. So just, that's the key, is identifying a problem or seeing something, just using existing technology and just marrying it with some other application that you use in your day-to-day life. So that's what I do.
Well, on that
Keep the
note,
creative mojo going.
It looks like Makey got in trouble.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, he was hauled off last weekend. Probably had a little bit too much voltage or something. I don't know. So I just thought you might enjoy that. All right, one more thing before you head out, and then I'll cover it in your absence. Behind me is a little project I've been working on. in the Unreal Engine. Now it's going to be a little laggy because I am using the Chromecast to show you this. But I took the first-person demo as well as the VR demo, combined the two, but used a new service that last night we talked about at length from Google called Daydream. And Unreal kind of slipped, if you remember, leaked it, but then pulled it immediately. But if you have the ability to compile, they have it out on GitHub, and you can grab it there. Or if you want to wait till sometime next week, they'll have the binary in the version 4.12. But if you notice, I can shoot the little objects. What I think is kind of fun is notice how I can push them over the wall. If you're looking at me, what I have on my face is the new VR Uplay. Cool thing about this is that they're very large, lightweight canal lenses with little blinders to help fix the ambient light and distractions that normally occur from these type of over the phone type devices. So if you've got a 5.5-inch screen or higher, doesn't matter, iOS or Android, it's going to work perfectly with it. And yeah, it's kind of fun. I thought, you know, it's too simple. Great way to show off the new features of Unreal, but I found that just shooting these little Nerf balls with these things and shooting them over the wall is fun. Do you see all this, Chris?
Amazing.
Isn't that kind of fun? Again, it's laggy, it's not so laggy. And this, I bought a used Nexus 6P because it is the only phone that supports some of the Daydream, but all the newer phones that are coming out, not all, but let's say the phones that most people will be buying, like the S7, the new Note 6, as well as some of the things from HTC and Xiaomi and Huawei. I can't remember how to pronounce it, but even some of the Chinese brands will be supporting it. But if you want to start developing, get a 6P. But the surprise is you don't necessarily have to do that. I have found that Unreal Engine will convert or downgrade to cardboard. So if you've got like an S7, you can still use it and get great frame rates. You just don't get the new low persistent mode, but you get all the other features. And for some things, if you're not doing a lot of high speed motion, they'll work just fine. And so one of the things I'm going to carry on when you take off is how do you go about using the Unreal Engine, which, if you're not aware of it, is for free. And you can download it and you'll be able to do this on your own. Unity also has a plugin, so if you're a Unity fan. But Unity has always done cardboard, so it's not something that's any special unless you've got the Nexus 6P. But one thing they did mention is that I'm assuming next month they will have it actually built in to the Unity engine. It will no longer be a plugin, which is what they've already done with the Oculus. So that'll be kind of cool. So there you go. Kind of fun, huh?
Very
so
cool.
I'll show you how that works. All right. So when you disappear, you disappear. But I will move on to the little tutorial that Unreal has put out. Let me get to it. And I have a laptop set up to do it too, but this might be the best thing because there's some important points that you need to keep in mind when you're setting it up. And one of them I failed to do because I actually loaded this separately. But when it does actually come out, or like I said, if you've got some GitHub talents, you could download it and compile it yourself. You need Visual Studio 2015, and you can use the community version. It works. Compile it, takes about an hour. But then you have a complete build with the Google VR into it. So this kind of shows you what you need to do once you have that set up. You launch it, you create a new project, and I do suggest when you first just create a blank one. It then shows you what your settings should be. They show mobile and scalable 3D or 2D. If you've got a good phone, go directly to high quality. Don't collect your $200. I found that this kind of reduces its quality, and like I said, if you do have a fast phone, you won't see any lag. If you don't, and if you just want to experiment with it, just go ahead and use these features here. So a blank project, mobile, scalable, and then you just identify what you want to call your project, where you want to assign it, and then you go ahead and create it. So if you're not familiar with the Unreal environment, there's some other tutorials to get you started there, but this one pretty much will get you up and running. So then you need to go in and choose your plugin. Now, Unreal Engine already supports several plugins for different types. It already has the Gear VR, but if you don't have a Gear VR, it's worthless for any other Android phones. So they now have the Google VR, which works pretty much on any phone. Like I said, it does downgrade to cardboard, but if you got the Nexus 6P, it will put it in low persistence mode. This will be coming to some of the other Samsung phones soon. The Oculus input, you don't need any of these, so you could turn them off, but if you don't turn them off, it still will work. They disabled the Google VR because I guess what happens if you have it enabled, it immediately puts everything in VR. So they essentially turned that off. I think they may have fixed that, so that's not an issue anymore. So you'll need to enable that, and then you'll need to restart and then bring it back up. And then it shows you how to create a simple material. And I kind of like the approach they've taken. It's a lot of drag and drop and switches. So if you're familiar with any of the new 3D design tools, you'll be right at home here. And then it shows a little video of actually doing it, which I guess we can show. It's only 6 seconds. But essentially, you drag and drop your material onto the floor, and that's it. Boy, that wasn't difficult. And then you save your level, which I would suggest, because sometimes it might crash. I have not had that issue. What I've had problems with, and I'll get to it in a moment, is making sure your SDKs are set up for Android. If they're not, then all kinds of problems could occur. So then you set up your default map. So whatever you had named it, make sure that you set it up as your startup map and your default map. Make sure your settings, again, I found that high quality does work. So you can move to that if you want to, if you've got a faster phone. Then you want to make sure in the rendering process that you do not choose HDR. And that's extremely important, because I'll go back to my screen, because one of the things that I found out already, sadly, and let me bring it up, is that actually can become a problem. Even though they indicated, I found that I was able to use HDR on that little demo, which I just showed you earlier. And what HDR does is it levels out the, well, it gives you high dynamic range. So you now get information in the shadows. The previous version without it, the shadowed areas were very dark. But when I enabled HDR, you could actually see all the walls. So it's a nice feature, and hopefully they'll get it fixed. It seemed to work okay in that demo I just showed you. However, you'll see what happens in this demo once I bring it up. I have already converted another demo that was made some time ago for tablets, and I converted it to the Gear VR, and I've now brought it over to Google VR, and that is the Sun Temple. So, and notice though what happened when I left HDR, and I only get to one of my eyes, and too bad Chris had left. He kind of said, oh, you must have got a pirate version of VR, because you only have one eye. And I thought that was kind of funny, so I said arg, but oh well. So there you go. Hopefully I'll do another build when I get done with the show, and I'll put a show note link to the zip file, so you can actually use the Sun Temple with like a gamepad and actually visit it in VR, which is kind of neat. So back to the tutorial. So the problem is, if you do have this enabled, as I just showed you, you may lose one of your images of your eyes. So make sure that you, at least in the beginning, turn that off, and then later on you can test it and see. It does seem to have a performance hit, but again, if you've got a fast phone, you may not notice it. So pretty much any other settings in your mobile area can be left alone. One of the things it does turn off is some of your post stuff, but I found that you can play with those too. It disables any anti-aliasing, but I went ahead and turned back on FXAA and noticed that there didn't seem any significant hits. So you could probably do that as well. And then configure your project, put in your name of your company or whatever you want to call it. You don't really have to do anything. And then make sure that you change the platform to 21, or if you know that you're going to be on something higher than 21. For instance, I put mine on 23, which is Marshmallow, if I remember correctly, or I'm sorry, is Lollipop, and then 24, I think, is Marshmallow. I may have that wrong, but I believe that's the correct thing. So you can determine at which particular SDK, and then you go through and make sure you configure the performance. Supposedly with the 6P, you can also do this new scanline racing, which is low latency. I have had mixed results with that. It seems to have a lot of lag, and then with the low persistence mode, it seems to have a tendency to create, some trailing. And so I have turned it off in previous builds. I have both of these out in the forum, but I'll make sure in the show notes that the first-person shooter demo is available as well that you can download. And like I said, it pretty much runs on any phone. There are different versions, if both the 64-bit version and the standard ARM7, depending on your phone. If you don't have a more recent phone, do not use the 64, it'll crash. And then I also use the newer ES, or the OpenGL ES3, with the newer phones as well, which gives you transparency, which was not available in the previous OpenGL. So there's some new features. None of them I really used in the demo, but I do think there's some transparency in the version I just created with the Sun Temple. So if you've got OpenGL ES3, use that. I have tried to use Vulkan, but at least on the 6P, it did not work properly. N does support it. Unreal does identify that it is experimental. And for my case, it continued to crash. So I eventually had to just not use the Vulkan and use the standard OpenGL. There will be huge benefits in using Vulkan, and hopefully they'll get that ironed out, or maybe it was just something I was doing incorrectly. Either way, hopefully I'll have that ironed out and actually have some Vulkan demos. But keep in mind, Vulkan demos will only work on Android N. So if your phone does not have Android N, it'll just utilize one of the other OpenGL standards. But it will also work on the NVIDIA Shield tablet as well as a Shield TV. So that would be kind of cool. So if you, and I've already tried that, and it does seem to work. So keep that in mind. So make sure you set up your API levels. They show that down here. They show it at 21. I have found that I just left mine at latest, and it seemed to work fine as well. So you can do this or just leave it alone, and it seems to work just fine. And then you package it. This is where all the problems. If you don't install, and I don't even think they show it here, if you don't install the correctly, not only the SDK from the Android, and there's a build that they're using from NVIDIA. If you don't install that correctly and then restart, then you won't have the proper assignment for your Android SDK. And I don't think they actually, they don't show it. Let me go back and see if I don't think they did. Or I skipped it. No, they don't. So one of the things that you need to do is go back and make sure that you have it set up correctly for the proper SDKs. And also, very important, that you have your Microsoft Visual Studio 2015 set up properly. Otherwise, your builds will fail. And the sad thing, well, luckily they fail fairly early, but some of the builds, especially if you're trying to use the Vulkan libraries or something like that, can take up to an hour before your build is done, only to find out that it fails. So it can be a little frustrating. And I have a fairly decent machine, so the build process can be very slow. So here it shows you select ATC. I have found that Android ASTC is the recommended texture. I believe it does add time to your build time, but it does compress them in a more what do you want to call it? Android friendly texture method. And so I would recommend that. At least that's what all the articles I have seen. As far as quality wise, I didn't see much difference, but you know, if you're going to do this and it seems to work, doesn't create any problems, go to the Android ASTC. And then, and obviously you may need to have a phone that supports it, but I think if you're Lollipop or higher, that that is the case. So you shouldn't have any issues with it. And I have tried some of my demos all the way back on a Note 4, which is still on Lollipop. All right, so once you do that, you create your Android build and let it do its build process. And again, this could take a while. They show it being used out to a USB device. That's not really true. If you have some way of pointing your Android device, there's like File Manager or something like that, to a network connection, you can pull the files or put them out your G drive or whatever the case. You can pull them and install them as long as you have the development and have the ability to install unknown SD or not SDKs, APKs. You can do that without having to actually have a USB connection. In fact, that's what you'll need to do if you download MyZips. So with that being the case, you can create a full development which has everything loaded into the APK. But the problem with that, and actually I left it on by mistake, some of these balloon out. In fact, that Sun Temple is like 400 megs. The APK by itself may only be, as you show here, or they show here, about 37 megs. It's about right. Actually, they can be far less than that depending on the complexity of the model. And then the OBB would have the rest of the component stuff as a separate file. Now, you do need the OBB, but what I've done is you launch your APK, it will come back with an error, then jump to the Android/OBB folder. You'll see a new folder created with the name of your Unreal project, and just copy this OBB file into that, shut down the launched APK that failed, and then relaunch it, and everything should work fine. So it's a multiple steps, but your downloads are shorter. In fact, in my case, it gave me several APKs, like this is an ARM7 ES2, which is the lowest grade. If you want to go with OpenGL ES3, that's a separate APK. If you want to go to 64, that's a separate APK. So the ones that I build out all have separate APKs, as well as a separate OBB file. So they're all there for you to try out. And then it says you can run those batch files, but again, you have to have the USB drivers for your phone so that it goes out to it. And even that, if you don't have your phone set up, can be an aggravation. And then you just go into your Android N, locate it, and launch it. And here they show, what's kind of cool is that since it uses the cardboard profiles, if your cardboard profile is already set up on your Android device, it will use that and you will be able to work with it. So that basically is the tutorial for that. And I think I pretty much am done. And so let's get on to what's in the news, and then we will end the show. So what do we have going on in June in printing? So let's see, we have, again, many shows outside the country. Italy, 7 through 9, Germany, Erfurt, EFET, and then we have something in later in the month in South Korea, the Inside 3D printing for Seoul. In the VR world, I do know, and I don't actually have a day here, that AW is coming up, and we're in May. Okay, I don't see. They don't seem to have anything further than May. So what do we have? We don't really have anything. Yep, actually we do. So 1st of June, next Wednesday is the start of AW. It was sooner than I hoped. So hopefully I'll be out there. If not, I'll be covering it at the end of next week. AW has a lot of augmented reality. Obviously, that's in the name, Augmented World Expo. But they also have a large section on virtual reality now as well. So there you go. that's what's coming on, and that's actually been a fairly good show. And I don't know if it's in the same location. It was at Santa Clara last year, but let's see what comes up. Well, you'll see it in the show notes, and you can find it yourself. So here we go. So Santa Clara Convention Center again. So that's where it was last year. Nice little location, well laid out little expo. A lot of people there. Spent about 4 hours covering interviews with a number of people there. So if I can make it out there again, I will, and we'll cover some more things. But other than that, that's about it. All my viewers have left me. So I think that's about time to say goodbye. So I will. So bye.